Economic Development Authority addition to order. Do we have a quorum?
We do, Chair, and I'll call the roll. Ms. Dearden?
Here.
Mr. Sloan?
Here.
Mr. Pittock?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
And we know Ms. Wyson is absent, and we have a chair quorum.
All right, and now we have the citizen comment period. We have no comments. There are no citizens present other than us. So we can close that section and move on to the approval of the minutes from May 16th, May 23rd, and June 20th. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes. Is it appropriate to move approval of all at one time?
Yes.
Madam Chair, I will move to approve the meeting minutes of the EDA from May 16th, May 23rd, and June 20th.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, those are approved. Do we have a treasurer's report?
The treasurer report is in the packet. I don't know if you folks have any questions about it. Perhaps the chair can address it.
You don't change it on, do you?
Yeah, the year end for the June 30th account. And I'm not sure what you said was from US Bank.
That came after the EDA packet went out. That's just something we get annually that I send you.
Okay.
It's probably behind all the minutes.
I'm trying to look and see where.
It's on page.
Yeah, 24. And that's through June 3.
Does anyone have any idea how many more payments Lincoln has?
Not many.
It's not many. I sent the report out, I want to say it was last month. Is it like 5?
I think you got October's payment already.
I did.
And I think they have 4 payments a
Yeah.
year.
It's not
I
many.
think it's 4.
So
I just
we're,
reviewed it now, it is scheduled sometime on the 19th, it's the balloon payment. We were pulling all that today, but it's not long, but what we were planning to do is not only the email, but all of the programs, add those as monthly summaries moving forward. So you're very clear on where every program stands and the reporting requirements and all those kind of things.
because we will need to do, we'll need to know what to do when that balloon payment comes up as far as
Forgiveness.
forgiveness. We have some kind of letter that we're gonna need to draft. So right now, it's just LCCD and Hardywood.
Shelter and Marcos.
Children arms and all shows. All shows this. Where's that?
That's the county's payment.
Yeah.
But it comes through the EDA.
Correct.
I think that one's done. Do we need to confirm that?
No.
Cap 1, is that?
No,
Yeah, if it's for the offsite
Yeah.
sewer, it's not.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about the annual payment, the $25,000.
Annual.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Yes.
Comes,
The other one is paid. See,
and
that's
there's a
paid.
cap one on.
Cap 1.
Yeah, let's see if we can get a summary on those to see where we are on all of them.
And that's completely monthly for you moving forward.
Okay. Any other questions about financial summary? We don't need to vote on that.
It's information.
All right, next, moving on to scheduled matters, we have discussion on the county economic development director vacancy. John, you gonna fill us in on that?
Obviously, Matt's not here. We were sad to see Matthew go. He's done a lot for us collectively in supporting the EDA and for the county. If you look back at the old strategic plan, I know it became a little bit of comic relief direction for Matt. When you look at the old strategic plan, there was a fair amount that has been accomplished. I don't think we should discount the efforts that collectively have been accomplished. And certainly wish Matthew and his family well as he moves forward in his professional roles and step back and really say, how could we do this different? How can we do it better? And one of the things from a timing perspective, just to let you know, a couple things. Those of you who haven't been on, we get to meet Todd earlier.
It's 4 or 3 times. How you doing, sir?
Todd Kilduff serves as my deputy over community development for the county. As soon as Matthew had given me his resignation, I was at the beach when Matthew called and resigned. So I called Todd that afternoon and said, hey, you ready for a little more work? But we knew that we wanted to transfer as much knowledge from Matthew as we could in a short period of time, and given us a 2-week notice. And so both myself and Todd with Matthew and Todd with Matthew alone, we walked through every outstanding project or initiative or contact that Matthew has had, and got status updates and contact information and all those kinds of things from Matthew. The good news is we don't have a lot of active economic development, new business projects right now. There's a couple that are tailing on. We've still been working with the hotel that had an incentive supported by the board. Other than that, there's not a lot of new projects kicking around that required substantial amount of follow-up. There were some that were still early stage, looking for warehouse, early stage looking for potential distribution space, but it was to the point where we were able to make a transition. Matthew assisted with all those transitions by introducing Todd either personally or through email with those contacts. So for an interim period of time, at a minimum, I have Todd supporting the day-to-day kinds of functions. Matthew and I work together on a lot of the projects anyway, so I'm going to continue in those roles. So that was the first thing we had to do, was really get our arms around what's going on, what needs to be followed up on, and make sure that we have processes in place to do that. There were some other projects that had never even been initiated that we're going to be starting to follow up on as well. Matthew did do his mid-year report before he left for the board, and so we actually have the statistics and data through mid-year. And we transferred the CoStar and the other software to Todd to be able to manage in Matthew's absence. The other thing we're doing, and I alluded to it during the financial reports, but what we got to do is just make sure all the programs and initiatives and grant or programs that we have out right now, we're very clear on all the deliverables and responsibilities that we have, because even the APIC grants have requirements. While usually the grant recipient has to be the responsor, we have to make sure that they did meet those deadlines and did follow up, and that was one of the first things we did. So we're getting an outline that we'll be sharing with you at next month's meeting that gives you a status on every program grant that has come through the EDA that we have a responsibility to manage and meet timeframes on. So you'll start seeing that report monthly. It may be a little bit of overkill monthly because sometimes those things don't change, but we wanted to make sure for our own benefit internally, we didn't want anything falling through the cracks that, sometimes when you're in a role, you just do because oh, December, these are due. And so we decided to just get that all tracked. Lisa and our finance department knows that stuff, but as we're going transition, we wanted to just be able to show it in a little bit different way. We also went back and said, okay, we just had the benefit of the retreat. We did receive the initial retreat summary from the consultant. We're going through that now. One of their deliverables for us is a final report, so we'll get that and work to bring a draft final. Probably see that next month. But what we did was we went through the existing strategic plan, the work that was done at the retreat, and some other general day-to-day administration support things that you take for granted of who does the minutes for whom, who's responsible for different processes, and we basically roadmapped everything that we wanted to accomplish or that we have to offer just to sustain. And so we broke it down into what's our roles and responsibilities in support of the EDA, what did we identify that we collectively wanted to do for new business, and what did we want to do for existing business, what are some of the generalized things that we need to do and support, and then the tourism piece that we added last time. And And so this was really critical for us to go through, and then we identified what did Matt do in support of all this, what did Lisa do in support of this, and what were goals that we wanted to try to achieve that we recently identified. This exercise was, I think, extremely helpful for us to create a framework as I look at what am I going to recommend to the Board of Supervisors as the next steps in the post-mat area. And when you start really looking at everything we identified that we want to accomplish, no one individual could do it and do it justice at all. I mean, I could just, I got a job description for Matt. I could have thrown it out on the street and tried to hire another Matt. What we decided to do was let's step back and say, really, what is it that we want to try to accomplish, and how can we do it effectively? And so we are in the process, we will be finalizing it this week, of bringing a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors that allows us to best accomplish support of all of the identified goals, initiatives, the day-to-day kinds of things. And some of this may sound really basic, but if you go look at your own website today, we have not updated that website in years. All the sites we have in the county are not on that website. Some of the sites, the photography is very poor. Some of the things that we need to just do as a fundamental kind of operation for economic development are behind. And as good as Matt was, most of his focus was on new business recruitment. And quite honestly, that's probably the funnest part of economic development. I enjoy that part of it myself. But where we fell short was probably in having the resources and times to support our existing businesses. And tourism wasn't even on our radar, really. We knew we needed to bring it in. And so as we look at all this, I'm developing, and I'll share with you at this level that I'm proposing most likely will not be a one-person show as we move forward. I do have to be respectful that I have a budget to work within. I can't go add a bunch of new people to this mix. And so I'm proposing a plan that is more of I always believe economic development is more of a team sport anyway. One person can't do this effectively. And so I've engaged Todd in some ways. The one thing about Goochland that we all said, even at the retreat, was what makes Goochland special is that we can help people through the business development process, the business ombudsman. Why I've engaged Todd is not only Todd comes from a private background, private consulting background, and has worked with a lot of the brokers and the players in the community. He also oversights our day-to-day business processes for what new businesses have to go through to get started in our county. And so there is a logical time in my mind to engage Todd in some way, shape, or form as we move forward, because I think it's important if you're engaging with our business partners, we also need to understand that the push-pull that regulations have, what paving gravel lots do with a small business, and I think there's some real value in having people engaged on both sides of that fence. We're also going through a major zoning ordinance rewrite. Having an ED hat on will not be a bad thing as we look at rewriting these zoning ordinances over the next 18 months. So what I can share with you is I think we've done as much of a transition from Matthew that we possibly could. The good thing is Matt has given us a cell phone number. We still have a relationship with Matt. We left on good terms. If there is something that we need to consult with him, he's the kind of guy that will accept those phone calls.
And he's still in the area, too.
Yeah, he's here till at least November. And so his family's actually moving, but he's going to be in the area until at least November, is what he shared with us. So we're planning on the transition. I think we've already met collectively with Virginia Economic Development Partnership. We've actually opened a few new doors at VEDP and have, we've already scheduled, we're on VEDP's calendar already for October to come in and give the Goochland spiel to their team. We're tying into their workforce development people. There's things that we weren't doing yesterday that we will be doing tomorrow. And so I really see we have to go back and do some cleanup on the fundamentals. But I don't want the momentum to get lost of what we just did. And so what I promised you is come next month, I plan to bring you the status of the strategic plan work that we did with the board and a little more refined product than what we have right now from the consultant. In the next 60 days, we are also going to do a couple initiatives. And I think that one of the things that, while it didn't come completely clear, Mike, at the retreat, is by January, we're clear on what's the staff role, what's the EDA's role, what's the board supervisor's role, and we all could at least understand what lanes and responsibilities we have in ensuring economic development success in the county. We are planning to take the work that the consultants just did with us and merge backwards with the existing strategic plan on what was not accomplished, and create a product that will come out of that, and with measurable timeframes of when we plan to accomplish X, Y, and Z. It will be a multi-year plan. We can't do it all at once, but and bring that back to you and talk through it all with you. Do you think this is reasonable? This is where we're saying the EDA could play a key role in. There were things that came out of the retreat, that the business liaison roles, the CEO roundtable. There's some things we can do sooner than later. There was a lot of feedback about how do we actually get information that makes the county's zoning planning processes better, and how can EDA play a role in gaining that feedback and making sure it turns into tangible results on improvements in those processes. So my commitment to you is that incrementally over each of the next months until we get to January, we're going to chunk away at that. You will see those products, have meaningful input in those products, and hopefully have a much clearer picture of what all of our roles are in support of each other, independent, those kinds of things come January. I believe we'll have a structured support system in place. Hopefully the board will support my recommendations next week that can help us have the physical assets to do some of that work. We also plan to do, and I welcome feedback from the EDA on this, a poll of all of the regional EDAs. So you have a picture of what functions do each of the regional EDAs play, what resources do they have ongoing revenue, what's their staff support look like, what programs do they offer, so you can actually see what are your counterparts doing in your region. And we'll be able to bring that back to you as we refine these longer term plans, so you have a little better perspective of what other folks are doing in the region. So I shared a lot, but I'm welcoming feedback in this process. While the staff reports up through me, they are in support of you as well. And so I am sensitive to making sure that we have the folks that can give you the support you need as you move forward. And we move forward collectively. But I think we will be poised to be able to do this even more successfully than we even have been. The data side is still going to be critical to us. We have the tools to do all the data tracking. The one thing that I've said to Todd, I said, we have been the beneficiary of a lot of good success in the past few years. What we also need to do is look at what is it that we touch that drives success, and what's there's not always a dollar for dollar ROI on economic development, but where are we putting our time that's resulting in results? We can't hit every target market, so what are we touching that's helping drive those target markets? What are we doing to market properties better? We found in the short run that our property inventories are way off. And some of that is the way the data is collected. So for instance, you've heard Matt say we're down to 10,000 square foot of warehouse. We're down to X number of square foot of office. Well, that may not be wrong, but what that is, that's a self-reporting into those systems that we get. We know that there's people that aren't self-reporting, that we're not collecting their square footage. So therefore we also don't have it to market. And so we need to get a better handle on the assets that we have in the county. And so we plan to actually build from scratch the inventories to make sure that we can go back and say, okay, what we're seeing real in the field may actually be 20,000 square foot, but the tools are telling us it's 10. There is a disconnect sometimes in those data sets, so we have that work to do. And so,
What about real estate tax assessments tell us
doesn't tell you vacancy rates. It tells you buildings and what, it won't tell you what's built. From a pure property tax standpoint, if you don't have any machinery and tools inside, you could be vacant and you're gonna have the same annual tax bill. So it is a little bit hard to really track back just on property tax kind of basis what we have available.
So what other tools do you have that could track that?
And some, and I gotta tell you, I usually use the CoStar data. That's the fundamental stuff. But what we have to do is almost field survey, and that's the benefit of the field survey stuff is you're actually building relationships with existing property owners and brokers and those kinds of things. I don't anticipate we're ever going to become someone's broker, but I do anticipate that in tandem with someone's broker, we can better market their properties collectively. We're never going to become Pruitt's broker, but we need to make sure that we are a conduit to contacts that may not go through Pruitt, that come from the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. And certainly Matt had some of those relationships. We need to recreate those in our new team going forward. But I will say, just in the past couple of weeks, and since Matt has left, I've fortunately or unfortunately had to find the extra time to get more engaged in economic development. And I've been intentional about talking to certain people. And some will say, well, I never met your economic development director, or, I got 5,000 square feet. And I'm like, well, if you got 5,000 square feet, I know this building has this, that. The numbers just aren't adding up when we're making certain reports. I want to go back to what I said earlier. I want to be able to track our touch points. So we may have $100 million of new investment this year, which is a great figure, and we're still doing it. But what did we touch in the $100 million? If Cap One did a $50 million renovation project, I probably, or no one in the county did anything to make that happen. But what is it that we're touching? And some of it's intangibles, like creating business climate. How do you determine that creating a good business climate made someone invest? You can't always do that, but you can say, okay, we helped walk someone through this building permit process, and that investment may be a return. That we did these loans or incentives, that was a touch point. At least at some point in the process, someone on the staff or EDA, if there's a role, had a touch point. And you can track that. We just aren't doing it today. And so I don't want to negate that, we've had some really good luck at good markets. We've had some really good luck at Henrico growing out of property in some cases. We've had some benefit of geographic benefit of people seeing this as a place to make investments. I think we aren't the Goochland of 6-7 years ago. There is a credibility that we now have that we didn't not long ago. So I think some of that, and that we've built some good momentum in the recent past, has helped our economic investment. We don't read about our board and school board feud in the paper every day. Those kinds of things go a long way. You can't always say they invested here because of this and that was a touch point. Those intangibles. But I do believe over time, a culture of that will bestow us well in the business investment side of things. So going back to where I started, there's been a lot of work in a short period of time just to figure out what could best serve us in accomplishing this end game. I don't think what I'm recommending to the board will be a sole economic development director. In fact, I'm not sure it may be someone completely at that level. It may be a teaming process of, Todd and I engage on certain level prospects, and we have some supportive staff that does the day-to-day stuff that was quite honestly can be mundane. If you get an RFP from the state, it eats up 3 or 4 business days. But if your only person is focusing on that, they're doing nothing else. The other thing, and this is just the nature of the beast, when you have one-person departments, as good as that person can be, you're as good as what they left the day they left. I need to have some cross-training and make sure that we have people that can seamlessly jump in and out of roles. And we just didn't get there in economic development. We've been doing it almost everywhere else where we could. And
Just
so,
forced your hand.
yeah, and honestly, if Matt was still here, I may not have done some of what we did, but I think it really, if there is a time, this was as good as any. And as we move forward, I think we're going to try to align people with their strengths, bring some people in. We need folks to do the day-to-day, the website maintenance, the mapping updates, the marketing work. We went several years without spending the county's marketing budget. And it's hard to say that by spending $20,000, we would have had a better year than we did. I can't tell you that right now, but if we're strategic in trying to accomplish some of the things that we've just collectively identified and yet we're left undone from the old strategic plan, we're going to need to make some of those investments. We may those will be opportune times for us to come to you and say, in concert with what we're doing, or you independent, we think that these strategies may serve and move the ball on one of these goals. EDA, is this something you want to invest in, something you want to take ownership of? I think those conversations are what we need to have as we move forward. I would kindly request that while we're in this process, I'm not sure I would start too many new initiatives as an independent EDA. I hope we all heard one thing from the board. They wanted to make sure we're moving in concert. And so if there is a need or interest in starting something, let's funnel it to the board and make sure the support and commitment to do it is there. But I think, I really hope, by the time we get to January and have this framework laid out and we start talking about strategies, when you and the board ultimately re-adopt this new plan, we will have that framework to make informed decisions that if you want to have a loan program, if you want to have a grant program, what is it in furtherance of, and what does that structure look like, and how is it managed and run, and all those kinds of things. We're doing this because it furthers this new business initiative in this way. We're doing this because it supports our existing business in this way. And I think we will be able to I hope that you feel that your time here, whether it be an hour and a half, once a month, and or the committees that get created, you feel that your expertise and time, and it has a tangible value to moving the economic development ball forward. And I think there have been times that probably you felt as frustrated as staff that we meet, and yes, we do some of the things the board tells us, but what is it doing? And yes, the code allows us to do this and that, but what's it furthering? I don't want that to be a question a year from now. We did this, made these investments, spent this time for this purpose. Now, do they all pan out the way you hope? No, but we need to be, I think we identified, we need to be a little more nimble. That says if something's not working, how do we adapt and move it in a different way? Those should be, we should have metrics of right on the front end, know what success looks like, and be tracking with certain metrics. A year sometimes isn't always enough time to look at that stuff, but I really hope if I'm sitting here next August or next July and we can't say what we're doing here and going through this agenda is furthering something, we've failed. I struggled as much as you did before that board retreat. And maybe we didn't get as much out of it as we'd all hoped, but by the time we adopt this joint strategic plan and we deliberately have more conversations like that, not just once every 5 years kind of thing, more regularly, we're back checking each other so we know, yes, you're doing what the board hopes you'd be doing as the EDA. We as staff can know that we're supporting you and your success and moving the collective ball forward. So that's my hope for this process as we move forward. We want the success, I think, as much as you want the success. So we're committed to helping you as a board be successful and collectively the county-wide economic development initiatives. So I think I sort of hit a little bit on the strategic plan and the development director vacancy, but that's each month we're going to be deliberate about bringing something back to you that's a work product. Some of it will be draft, and then when we get to sort of that January timeframe, it needs to be adopted by both boards again. And then it creates a revised version of this. And I will tell you, a lot of this is data sets. But the pages that were specific on the strategic plan, there was some good work that was even started that was just dropped. the Rural Economic Development Council kinds of stuff. There was actually some good stuff about tourism that was done if that you wanted to think about it in the future. So how do we now take it and make sort of the 2.0 version of this using what we just learned from one another and make sure that we're moving it forward? So I would see, once that's adopted, let's say January, we should be given more regular updates, at a minimum twice a year updates on strategic plan progress. The one thing we do at the county level that may serve the EDA well is every time we have an agenda item, we tie it back to what board of supervisors strategic plan goal is that work product attempting to address. And at least everything we do then at least relates back to an end game. And so I think as we down the road look at this agenda, we may want to suggest we're adding this for discussion because it's towards this goal and those kind of things. I think it serves us well at the county level. And I think it makes your strategic plan more of a living process than just a document. But you got to be deliberate about it, or it just, you lose things. I mean, there was things in there that, whether it was just due to resources or time, or we forgot, that we just never got to. But if you're deliberate about it, you call yourself out in the question of saying, okay, we said we were going to accomplish this by next July. Where are we? And sometimes we say, well, this got in the way, or this. But we should be able to give you a progress update on everything we say we're going to accomplish in the next fiscal year, next 18 months, whatever it may be, and really be able to tell where we lean in our progress. In the interim, Todd is going to be helping with the EDA surveys that we're going to do. I think what we're going to do, and if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, the survey itself, we were going to draft some of the format, but if we can send it out to the EDA, get your blessing in saying, I'd also like to know this about them or that. We can add those questions to that as we collect the of the other regional EDAs. And so, some of the basic things we want to make sure is, budgets, staffing, programs, just, those kinds of things are the fundamentals that we need to make sure. I think it's as good to know what they're doing and as well as it is to know the differences in their style. Like the city's EDA is going to be different than the counties and those kind of things. But there are reference points. They're what people in this region look at as either successes or maybe not. But I think it would be good, because if you haven't sat on another EDA, you may not have some of the perspectives of what, and you read in the paper, well, the Richmond EDA has done this, or the Henrico EDA has done that. Why aren't we, or could we be doing that? And I think maybe we are missing something that we could be doing that would further our economic development being here. And there's things that we could do that maybe they're not doing that due to our size and the type of culture we want to have here makes sense. So I'm not sure you can really, you got to have a fuller picture before we can make some informed decisions. That's sort of both where we're at on the staffing side, as well as bringing back the point with your plan at the end of the day, and the board's plan for your consideration and adoption over the months to come.
How do you go about getting that survey? The other EDAs?
We're actually going to physically do it. So we're going to create the tool, get you to answer the question. We found that if you just send an EDA a survey and ask them to fill it out, the nice thing about knowing all the other county administrators, I'm going to say, give me your economic development contact. I'm going to say, Brew told me I could call you. John told me I could call you. Joe told me I can call you. And we're going to walk them through and fill out the surveys on their behalf. And if the ones that we just send, they want a box to check. They don't want to spend the time of really understanding structures. And so I think this one needs to be a little more detailed and more meat to it than just a survey monkey kind of thing.
Yeah, who knows to compare?
The ones that we normally compare ourselves to are Louisa, Palatine, New Kent, Henrico, Chesterfield, Hanover. Those are the regular ones. If there's others you'd like to have in that, part of the reason I do that is those are somewhat of our market comparisons that we do locally. We do it because those are the we compete with for business investment in employees. But if there's other counties we want to add to that, we can certainly add more to that. But that's the ones we traditionally do most of our survey work with. This one would probably be a little more labor intensive, but I think the product would be better.
What about the banner?
Certainly.
Isn't that's where Zion Crossway is? Or is it,
It's Ions and Louisa.
doesn't really say.
What I'm hoping to do is just for your own edification, this product here, I'll pass around. You can just see there's some things that we take for granted that we do in ED all the time. A lot of this has Lisa's name next to it. She just does it, and I don't think we all really even know sometimes. But it was really important to really make sure that we had owners to this. Especially as I'm writing job descriptions and stuff, we can make sure hold people accountable in certain roles. So glad to share this with you as we continue to go through the meeting. Is there anything I can add or any questions you have at this point?
What is the time frame that you're looking at to hire somebody or some bodies?
I will tell you if the board, I have 2x2s with the board Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday next week. If they bless this, I'm hoping by the following week we're posting something. I'm sensitive to workloads. Even if we team approach anything, it's a shared responsibility. There is work product right now that is completely new, that's just going to be additional for somebody else. I can't let that go for too long. Plus, we have a role, basic fundamental role, sort of non-written, but we talk about, you have to return every call in 24 hours. Some of that's not been occurring, so we need to make sure that those kinds of things are. If an RFP comes in tomorrow, we're going to all be scrambling to respond to it. I need people that can just do some of the basic stuff that Matt was able to do, through the 40-hour work week. I was also very flexible with Matt because in economic development, it's not always 8 to 8:30 to 5. Matt would go to dinners or breakfasts, and some of economic development work is face time. It's being there, talking to people, learning where the leads might be coming from, or letting people know who you are. And I don't want to lose that either. You still got to show up at a lot of these kinds of things. And Todd and I are going to do our best, but we need some more support for that too. But it's going to be pretty quick. And if the board completely says, no, we want you to hire another Matthew, I will tell you, and I've been blessed to work in a number of jurisdictions, Matthew had a different, and Matthew is sort of a rare breed in economic developers. There is a benefit sometimes of someone coming from the private sector and not always being a government employee. Because you get to understand the dynamics that a private entity has to go to that you're not caught up in the bureaucracy. Matthew also had a lot of family contacts that led to some of his success. I've hired at least 4 economic development directors in my career in Virginia. That is not of the applicants I see. And so Matthew had some skill sets that he was able, in contacts that he was able to gain through some personal relationships. That's great. We have a lot of those with the work that we do now. And so we just need to cultivate them in different ways. And so I'm more, if you look at that list, I'm really trying to think about how can we collectively be successful as we move this all forward. And I'm not sure as good as Matthew was if we just said, Matthew, you're now responsible for all of that. He would have been able to be successful. He just didn't have the time. And so I don't think it's fair to try to set one person up with too much expectation on it. So there's some things that Matthew helped with that other folks internally, property surplus. Matthew was involved with the selling of the property up here. If it wasn't right on that corner, Derek Stamey would be surplusing it as part of a county piece of property. And so can we shift some of the things that are natural for them? It doesn't mean the economic development relationship of that sale goes away. You still have it, but you're not running down convenient power easement stuff. You're not running down the roundabout impact stuff. And just focus on the business side of it, on the economic development side. And so there were some things Matthew was doing, quite honestly, because no one else was. He just was there and would jump in. But now I got to look at it. Okay, is there logic for someone else to be doing this and someone else to be doing that? How do we maximize that? So. More to come. I know there were months that you didn't see me. That's going to change. I'm going to be at all these with Todd until we come up with something different. If we get new staff, they will be here too. We're all collectively working to a collective goal, and I want you to be engaged in those processes.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. We'll go on the same.
I'm sorry, but I didn't get the top to do that.
He's one of my deputy county administrators.
Yeah, I was actually hired about 6 years ago in the county as the director of public utilities. Just fix it and just. Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's, I couldn't, that thing.
Hopefully it was a good utility experience that we had,
Yeah, definitely.
and not a high water bill or something.
Well, water bills are survived, but that.
Oh, okay, well, that's not bad. But then Dan Chardon, who was my boss, he ended up retiring, and I took over for him. So then I moved from being specifically in public utilities to all of community development, which utilities is under as well. So that's planning and zoning and building inspections, environmental, so basically everything that's on that wing over there. So it's a unique world over on that wing. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it very much. I still miss the utilities because I'm not in it as much, but our new director of public utilities, actually I hired him in the county about 5 years ago. He's the new director, and he comes in my office, gives me little updates and snippets just to keep me satisfied. But now Matt Ryan's gone, so now I'm doing a little bit more of economic development. So.
But as you can imagine, especially with new business prospects, the infrastructure stuff is paramount, and the process stuff is paramount. So they're asking, how quickly can I get through your building process? How quickly? Todd has all that knowledge, and those people work for him. So I think there's also a balance, because the planning folks, and I told Todd this the other day, I said, we're going to have to help people realize he's going to have to balance his ED hat and his planning hat and help his, and it's an education process, because you're not dealing with the business community all the time, and you're just in the bureaucratic policy planning world, you can get stuck in it. And it's not always a bad thing, because they try to be consistent. They try to look out for different interests. But sometimes you can get caught up in, well, that regulation makes sense from a consistency standpoint, but what does it really mean to the guy that wants to hang a shingle? And I do think, as good as we try to be, sometimes we lose that. And I think that as things have changed, I mean, the whole business climate's different. It used to be a lot longer play. Now it's a shorter time play. I want to be in 6 months. I want to be in 18 months. And if they're willing to build, I mean, it's a different world. The mom and pop businesses, it's different. I mean, the whole loan program you guys were talking about was because they wanted to move into an existing building, and the county zoning ordinances impacted them negatively. And so, how can we look at that through different lenses and understand, an existing use may be a lot different than a greenfield site that's starting from scratch. And, I think it helps to have people that see both sides of the fence to educate policy norms. And by the way, they're really good policy norms, but I think sometimes you have to help them look through a different lens.
Okay. All right, moving on to an update on the outstanding loan request that we have with Carlos and Britta. We have yet to take a vote on whether we actually want to do the loan. And we've had discussions, individual discussions, a couple of us at a time about the loan.
And you had some communication with Britta as well about taking vacancy or
Yes.
having a lease, I'm sorry, signing a lease.
Do you happen to know when they actually signed the lease?
You told me the other day that someone else was looking at the property.
The day they actually went in to sign the lease, somebody else had also made an offer. So I actually don't know whether they signed the
I
lease.
know, your folks had shared with them the process of going through the variance process. I don't believe they've applied.
I don't think they have either, but I'll double check.
And then maybe because
They were told.
maybe there's another tenant that the landlord's working with, but we have not heard that.
Okay. So what we had talked about was, that most of us, including Lucy, although she's not here to vote, had, talked about not at this point feeling comfortable loaning the money to them, mostly because they were renting the property. But also, I mean, I'm not comfortable at this point moving forward with the loan program in general, because I don't feel like we have the capacity to manage the program, and we're not clear on the direction of the program, the whys.
I think Mr. Peterson made us well aware of that during his comments at our retreat a couple weeks ago. And he was pretty adamant for us not to do that.
How's everybody else?
The only,
feel about that?
the only hangnail I remember is the discussion about maybe getting involved in the waiver process.
Yes, we talked about if we decided not to loan them the money, that we would, offer to pay for their application fee for the waiver. Todd, do you know how much that is?
I don't know, but I can find that out. Obviously. I don't know off the top of my head. I know Anita would tell me off the top of her head, so, but I can find that out.
I think it's $700.
I think off the top of my head, yeah, I wanted to say 750, but I don't want to say 96.
And so, Madam Chairman, if you're considering trying to make a motion not knowing that, you could say not to exceed kind of thing if you were going in that direction. And so we could get that information back to you fairly quickly, but I think it's the same as a CUP, and it's either 750, but I don't want to give you the wrong number.
So I feel like we have two issues on the table. One is the loan program in general. We need to decide whether we want to table that for now, and just take it off the radar and shelve it in the back corner for now.
I would make a motion, we should table the loan program.
Do we have,
And I'm assuming it's really need a motion just because of the fact that there's no required action. Unless,
we don't have a loan program.
Got it, okay, let me table the discussion of it.
We don't really have a formal loan program.
Okay.
But we do need to have a vote on whether we do loan Carlos and Berta the money that they requested.
The waiver.
No, they made a request of $50,000 to the EDA.
Right.
So we needed to vote as an authority on whether we do loan them the money.
and I would suggest, that we not make a motion to do so without the information. I'll say if they're actually going to do anything with that building, or if it's still in flux with regards to, because my understanding, my limited understanding is nothing is signed.
I don't know.
And so I think it'd be premature to do something without at least some type of, arrangement on their part.
If they get the waiver, the loan goes away, or the discussion of the loan goes away, correct?
Correct.
So that's one thing that could happen that we don't know is going to happen.
When they did come before us to ask us for the money, we did have a conversation that evening about, or it may have been afterwards, to check the minutes, Lisa, to say that we had felt it was probably best if we did not loan them the money unless they have signed lease.
Correct?
That's a degrees. It's a
Yes.
I do know that, and I believe they shared it in their testimony when they were here with you, that they couldn't sign their lease status of the EDA's loan, so they could meet that requirement. And so it was a little bit of a chicken and egg thing for them.
Right.
And also, wasn't there the issue, correct me if I'm wrong, about, or has that been satisfied with getting a resolution on, what's the other tenants of the agreement?
You guys had asked, and I know there was a committee that was gonna look at their claim bill out costs and see if they were seemed reasonable. I don't know.
I think that goes to the issue of not having enough staff to be able to do that properly. You know, that's what Mr. Peterson was kind of saying, that we don't have the knowledge of being a lender in the first place. We don't have staff to vet references and read the plan, so I think we didn't really talk about it.
I believe we do need a motion to say yay or nay, whether we give them the money. I think that they're expecting an answer from us.
I agree. So I'll make a motion that we vote, Madam Chair, to table the loan program for now. Table the loan program.
You want to conclude with that and deny the request to resume?
Yeah, I guess that would be a necessary part of it. If we're going to not offer a loan program, we need to make sure that they understand we're not offering it. I don't know how to say that better.
May I make a substitute motion, that, we with regards to the loan submittal that we've been provided, that, we table the motion, or excuse me, table the consideration of the loan, based on requests for additional information, both on the activities of whether or not they're going to go for variance and or the status of the property if it's still available. Because I would prefer to table and just keep it in consideration so that we don't address it this time. But I have some certainty of knowledge, or excuse me, I have my own knowledge and certainty about
So that keeps our loan program
alive.
alive.
But it places on hold this particular action until we get more information.
So simply just suspending any action on this particular loan request.
Yes, sir.
We're not saying anything about the loan program itself.
So the motion is to suspend any action on this loan request at this time. But then to show our good faith, that we would offer to pay their waiver application fee for an amount not to exceed, it's like $800.
I think that's fine.
I'll accept that as a minimum.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Who seconded that? Stevie?
Yeah.
Is it two motions now, or is it just?
No,
Just one, it's just
it's
one.
just one,
Friendly
and then
amendment to the
So it's the suspending the loan and approving the waiver.
table.
up to $800.
Okay.
All in favor?
Oh, Madam Chair, if I may, especially, I think, the county administrator. Especially.
Just for clarification. The way the amendment was, is it left the loan program out there.
Yes.
And I'm just cautious of what, we have no program to share with someone if they come to us tomorrow. So I think in some ways I'd like, and your emotions, I don't want to amend your emotions, but, and I'm not even sure you need to take action on this, just at this point, I'd like to be able to say to folks, there's not a current application to be submitted for consideration. There's not a program structure for you to submit something to.
Wasn't that part of the motion?
No, I think Ben kind of said, let's suspend consideration of their loan. I was going more towards let's table the loan program completely. We can always revisit it, explore
We
options.
need to have two separate
Well, that's an interesting question. Either have to separate or that I would suggest that we need to at least have the opportunity for the individual to join the bus for the base form, granted the code that's permitted to be used or actually has to be used. Just so that there's at least an opening for consideration by the EDA of anybody would approach in a reasonable fashion. That is, if we suspend all opportunity, let's say between now and January, that no one can theoretically come before the EDA and ask for any type of funds from the EDA.
I think that's something Mr. Desky stated earlier, to basically not engage in any new actions from now to January.
But I'm sensitive to the concern. The way the code reads it, it gives you the authority to do a loan program. But it doesn't necessarily say you have to, or say ultimately your authority, and even those that have had loan programs have had pretty rigorous structures and applications and vetting processes before they offer the program. And so I don't want to say it's not a tool of the EDA's, because it very well is. I just would suggest that if you decide to go there, or any program for that matter, we have a clear, consistent program that anyone in the county can do, not just someone that finds myself or Todd or one of the EDA members to do, that it's out on a website, that it's publicly available to be proposed for, and we're not in that position to do that today.
And in particular, I'm thinking of the form that's in particular form that is under 15.24907 physical impact statement. Thinking of that as a fallback mechanism for the internal financing by an entity that would come before the EDA. Basically, that it does ask a number of questions in there and makes it within compliance. Just only from the standpoint of not ruling out anything that might be coming before the board, before the EDA in that time frame. Because if something does come up, it would be within the purview of the EDA and hopefully the best sense of interest of the county to go ahead and pursue, let's say, any type of request, at least for consideration. Not that it would be, obviously granted.
What I feel is important for us as a board to offer the county is some kind of language that they can use to answer any request that might come in. So maybe we could say, well, we don't have a formal loan program at this time, but you're welcome to bring any request to the EDA.
Exactly.
It would be that simple.
And approaching it that way, and again, within the relative aspects of what the minimum, because I think what specified in the code is actually the minimum. We had discussed far more diligence than is proper. But just leaving it open, let's say not in total, but for consideration.
I'll respect the decision. I just, as your face to those businesses, what can I apply for? What's the maximum I can apply for? What's the criteria? I can't answer those questions. And so in some ways, just ask for whatever you want is not appropriate.
That's why I'm saying we need to be able to say we don't have a formal loan program at this time.
I'd like for us to be that precise.
Well, and therefore, would you say we do not have a formal loan program at this time, therefore no loans will be considered?
Yes.
I don't think it's appropriate.
That's why I said, but you're welcome to come before the EDA with a request.
Why?
Because per the Code of Virginia, that is our purpose, and that, for example, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
That's part of what's in the Code of Virginia that allows us to do, like you say, different types of transactions. And if you go up on top of that, you can actually see the description of, let's say, the allowances that the EDA can do. And my only concern is just shutting off everything without getting opportunity. And I understand the concerns that you have, because the code's not explicit.
It's an authority granted that we don't have as a county, it's that they bestowed on the EDA, but it also is almost a toolbox that gives the EDA to have different authorities to do different things to help business in different ways. Each EDA has its independent authority also to pick and choose which of those tools they want to implement and how they want to implement them. But I always look at, one of the things that we hear from the businesses is, tell me what the rule book is to do things in Unity. And so I know what I could do and what boxes to check. I would dare say the same is on the programs that are provided to me. Tell me what I need to do, and I'm not in a position other than say, hey, you can ask the EDA for whatever you want to ask the EDA for.
And it's fair. In accordance with, I think the Code of Virginia, our bylaws within the county, I think that's fair, because then the EDA, whether or not there's a specific application other than what's in the Code of Virginia, or whether or not there's specific, let's say, cases, precedents, we can make those decisions like they have in the past. Now, not to say that that's right, or especially right moving forward, but the fact that we would not be shutting off or stopping, let's say, the relative capability of what the EDA can do, that would be my only issue. And I think termination would be in consideration doesn't send a very proper message to the business community in general. Not that it would be advertised in any form of fashion.
I appreciate your concern on that. Again, I think that's a very broad set of parameters for which you can do. But that means that if anyone I talk to tomorrow and they say, well, can I make a request to your EDA, regardless of the size of the business, the type of the business, they can come into the EDA and make a request. My struggle is at the end of the day, if we don't know where we're going, I think we give a little, and if you recall the meeting with Mr. Hall, that wasn't a comfortable conversation. Part of the problem we had with Carlos, we couldn't tell him what he couldn't ask for. We couldn't tell him what structure it was, so come on and ask for anything. I just don't want to, none of us want to be back in that, having that same conversation.
And I think the conversation with Mr. Hall, where I take exception to what he said in a certain respect, is the fact that I would not put that, blame might be too terse of a word, but I would not put that on the county either, because of the fact that the EDA has the purview, the right to essentially set up a structure to do so, and the EDA hasn't done it. So I don't, I look at what he was saying, and that's why I took a little bit of backtrack on the way he presented it. We could have, and there was some work that was done earlier, establish a complete program ourselves. That then we could go to the county and say, or modify it as, let's say, we move towards Singapore. Because I don't see it as a distraction from the way that jointly we want to work. I see it more as the EDA has, let's say, certain inherent skills and certain rights to do things, and not to put any type of boundary layers between the sections of the code or anything else, or defer to them, but to really at least enable the processes to continue. Now, in terms of absolute maximums, minimums, and exact processes, I don't know why it would be necessary to defer something, or let's say not consider something that really isn't changing anything anyway. So when Carlos or any entity would come before the board, it would be, excuse me, I keep saying board, I don't need to do that, the EDA, guess I don't see that as a conflict per se with what the county wants to do. And at the same time, what business can be allowing them to at least have the access or potential access to funds EDA.
I'm thinking about some of the other entities that have come before us in the years I've been on the EDA to ask for money, and as an authority member, it's for a board member, it's been a little challenging to know what criteria to use. So that's, I think, the whole reason why we're coming up with the loan program parameters, is because we kept having people come before us and we didn't know what to tell them. So I don't know where that leaves us. If we leave ourselves open, which by law we probably should, but what parameters do we use?
Well, those can be developed by the EDA in joint with the county or by the county.
Which we did develop some of these parameters, but then who administers the loans? I mean, there's still,
We don't have support.
we don't have that support at this time. Well, the county administers the loans that we have out right now.
Yeah, the county has been administering loans. Now, the county isn't going to, but I don't think that's an issue per se, is it? Or,
Well, if it got to be a lot, it would be an issue, but the pace we're on, it's manageable. I will still say, I heard too from Mr. Peterson that he was questioning, even though you're an appointed authority that has separate state code authorities, I still think that they didn't necessarily want DDA going in directions that weren't consistent with some of their perspectives, and I think other board members would share that. And so from a loaning perspective, it's also not just having the parameters and having a consistent program is one side of it, but the credit worthiness piece. I'm not sure I personally or anyone on my staff has the skill sets to determine the credit worthiness, and on the loan in particular, one of the questions came up of is if a bank won't give them the funds, why should we? And some of the reasons why we should is because we're trying to incentivize that kind of business. We've made a determination that that's consistent with the goals we want to get to, and we want to do that. We just haven't done that part. And so, and I would say if we do keep it on the books for at some future time, a loan program is something we want to administer, I would potentially come to you and say, maybe this needs to be done through a third party that has someone that is in the loan business that can actually recommend to you to the credit worthiness of certain people. Some places, the loan programs are certainly a tool, but I will tell you, they have been met with different arrays of success. And some are very successful and some are less successful. Licking Hole's paid, and we've been elected. But if Licking Hole doesn't, the best we had was we sent them a letter because they were late. But what collection methodology do we have in place to collect for someone who doesn't pay? And there's also, I think, as a reflection on the one time a loan program goes bad, it'll be a reflection on both the EDA and the county. And so I think we try to mitigate those risks. And some places have gone to pure grants. They're like, look, we don't want to be in this program. We think this is something we believe enough in, we're going to put some money behind it. We manage our risk by making it a smaller amount of money, and we get out of this whole collection side of the business. And so those options are available to you as well. I just, I appreciate the authorities that you're granted and want to respect it. I also think no matter what we do as we move forward, we still have to have some criteria to manage it against. Yes, would I like a strategic plan in place that says we do this because it furthers this? That's ideal. But you didn't have it all these years, so that's something we're striving for. So in the interim, what do? I'll play devil's advocate a little bit, because on one hand, I like the no holds barred. Let them all come ask for anything they want to ask, because we can at least know what's the need in the community that maybe is not being met anywhere else. You can learn things from that part of the process. I will say, and Carlos, folks in the business community that I've worked with, and you're all in the business community, when they're looking to start their business or get something rolling, they don't have time to be whipsawed in the process either. Are you gonna do something for me that hour I come to the EDA just to tell you my story? Is it gonna be fruitful? Is it gonna really give me anything? You know, and if we as the staff setting them up and schedule work, getting them on the agenda for you, you know, come ask for anything. I think that's also frustrating to people in the business community. I would, Carlos and them may have said, well, you wasted my time by even coming or filling out this application and this and that. And I'm sensitive to not doing that to those folks either. And so I can see it a little bit through both lines. I will tell you, the motion that's on the table right now addresses your issue with Carlos. We're not promoting the loan program. If you're not promoting the loan program, we may not even be dealing with this until after January. And so I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much further, but I will be sensitive that if someone asks us if there's a loan program on it, I could say, well, the EDA's decided you can come ask, but I don't want to give you any hope or promise because we just don't have a program to tell you about.
And you know, I think that's completely fair. And you know, with regards to risk mitigation, understand that collection, you know, I would suggest is more of a contractual issue. So risk mitigation is one thing that is a precursor, let's say, as part of the analytics evaluation. And then the collection is a similar process. It's being agreement through any type of what's established within it through council or whatever the case might be. So I'm not as worried about the standard collection unless the county itself, that county administration, that puts a burden on them that's, let's say, substantial, that would be beyond what would be expected from staff.
I'm not sure until we had a program defined that I could really answer the question.
Well, it's already being conducted.
I can do a lot of one kinds of things.
Well, I'm thinking of the offshucks lines and you know other things like that. So, and that's a far more rigorous in a lot of ways than would be.
Yeah, the one thing that the offshucks, the Cap One, all the ones tied to AFID, they're paid in arrears. So we made a commitment, and we know we have a way to recover those funds. Licking Hole is really the only unsecured loan we have. The others have clear mechanisms that we can hold it against their property taxes, and we will never pay them if they don't pay in first. I think it's the unsecured loan program, and look, I think you have more reasonable success. Most people want to do what Licking Hole's doing today. And, you know, we got scared a couple months ago, Licking Hole didn't make their payment, we threatened them, and they've been paid ahead now. It only takes the next one to create the problem. And I think if we're going to do it, I just want a structure.
But no structure is going to eliminate failure. You can only mitigate within certain tolerances because there's always statistical deviations that are going to occur with any type of business. And you know, typically restaurants head towards that end, it's far worse. So I understand the concerns. I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of what the duties of the EA should be. And if the county brings no one to the EA, it doesn't matter anyway. Right. And if nobody contacts the county, they come for request.
Shall
And
we?
some of you could advocate. That's how Carlos, I think, found out that may be an opportunity for people, or you guys talk to businesses as well. Not actively promoting it, and we're not actively promoting it. This may be a non-issue, but I do think that my hope is once we get through the plan, we're not just doing everything as catch as catch can, let anyone ask for anything they want. It needs to be more targeted and strategic.
Well, I would completely concur, and I think, again, going back to the previous conversation, I think the EDA, through several different process points over the years, has started down the path, and that's the reason why, again, I think exception to some things we said in that previous conversation, that direction of what do we want to do. The process is also, to me, an EDA function that should be defined. No matter what the county, which way it wants to go with, let's say, total plan or strategic plan of the economic development. And I kind of discriminate between the two, and therefore, back to the conversation, make the exception with that. But the EDA could have done, it has done, and it could do a lot more.
And I respect that. At the end of the day, we're your staff that has to administer it. And we have to have the tools to do that administration that have your blessing and support. And I think, for good or bad, and I felt bad for Carlos and that went through the process, we learned a lot of how we could have improved it through that process, that if we were to, we decide in the future we want to clearly target a loan program to move this to achieve X, Y, and Z, I think we'll be much better positioned to get there. I respect that the EA could have helped put some of that in place and maybe avoided that ambiguity, but I think we're the ones that have to do it for you, or at your direction, or at your request, because we're the ones out there administering it for you. You make the policy voting decisions to approve or not, but we're doing the mundane stuff that has to be done to make those decisions.
And I agree, that's part of, let's say, the contract negotiations for how to minimize the risk at one point, and it's the council, our council, that helps in that, along with the county council, because the county doesn't obviously want to have the EDA fail. Our council doesn't want to have the EDA fail, and that's the reason why the agreement or any kind of contracts are constructed within that boundary of trying to minimize the failure that might come about, and therefore support the whole process in accordance with what's permitted by law through the EDA.
I get it. I hope that once we do the surveys and the other EDAs, will give you a little more perspective on what other folks are doing that is within the state code requirements. I will say that I don't think anyone that hasn't had defined programs can have achieved the collective success that I hope we've all want.
You say the campus?
I think that if you don't have defined programs and you sort of filter it all, you end up taking sort of that shotgun approach, trying to hit everything, where I think we need to be a little more targeted. I mean, imagine the gamut of folks we talk to. I talk from anything from someone that wants to get out of their house and start something to tourism entity, all of it could be considered economic development. And at this point, I can't say, yes, the Economic Development Authority has a program that can support you in this way or that way. But because they don't, I'll bring anything and everything to them. And so that I think there is a balance, and the other EDAs out there that have been working and been working effectively aren't accepting everything. And they are intentional about which programs they do. You will find, ironically, I know this body's wanting to do more, but some literally just manage the bonds and literally just manage the incentive grants, and that's it. They meet not even monthly, they're meeting quarterly maybe, and that's the function they do. Others have grants, others have loans, others have this other array of kinds of things, and operate monthly or every other month. So I think that kind of perspective will give you know that you have some allowance, you have a long leash that you can do a lot of things with the code authority. It ultimately comes back to what is it that you as a body want to do.
And I completely concur with that. I've seen a wide variance. I've spoken with actually several EDAs over the tenure, and Spotsylvania, for example, or probably to the south is not a good example to use right now, which might result in some legislative changes coming up in the next General Assembly. But I think it's a goal to get there. We're not there, but I don't think at the same time we shut off everything just because of the fact that there might be a situation where risk is not managed. In what essence, that's part of what the risk management, but I think there's, risk management, financial understanding, and, you know, I take that in stride of what it's offered. But at the same time, where we've been, and unfortunately, I've had too much tenure on this board, so I've seen a lot of different things occur where there, and quite frankly, I haven't seen a failure. And I see agreements that have been constructed through our council that minimize those. And
Sorry.
at the same time, also put us in a position where we're at now that we haven't achieved that losses. And even with the most recent case, we did, through the agreement, by the way it's constructed, again, the process, because the collection, you know, there's two types of collection. Let's say the standard non-corrective collection, and then the event-driven collection that is ex post facto violation of the agreement. So I just don't want to see the entire process thrown out right now without at least entities being able to have consideration given to them by the EDA. And I understand exactly what you're saying about bond-only EDAs, and in one sense, that's the whole motivation for the formulation of the code, from my limited understanding, looking back.
That's how it started. But I would say that those counties that only use their EDAs that way are less successful. And it's not a good use of your time either.
And I think a great example is, I think it's Fairfax. Some things they're doing up there, which to me is almost too broad. I mean, the staff they have and so forth and so on, but you know, you can also look at the results. But I digress. Sorry.
I have an active motion on
We
the
do have an active motion on the table. Can we, is it possible for us to restate the motion?
I think I made the motion that we, table the loan program until further structured or defined.
We are in line with this
Rough.
strategic plan to.
The table consideration of a loan based on a request for additional information, activity of whatever activities going on for a variance and status of the property, if it's still available, and you would support a waiver fee up to $800. That's not listening to the recording, but basically,
No, that is the motion I made.
you amended the motion.
And then
She
she
amended
amended.
with the 800,
Yeah, with the 800.
but basically that's the summary of the motion.
But on the reading, was that the cancellation of the loan program?
We
That's not
left that out, we were talking about table the consideration of the loan,
the current loan application.
current loan request,
for
we're
us.
not talking about the loan program.
Critical.
We're not talking, we're just
We're
talking
talking
about the
about the loan
consideration of the loan for Carlos and Brita.
Okay.
That was good?
And approving the waiver
Right, that's
action up to
included,
$800.
yes.
Do we have a second?
And I had DB second.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Now, just to be clear, there was not a withdrawal of any consideration. That was just simply for this case, correct?
Correct.
So,
So how do we help
So,
John face people asking questions? Because we still haven't defined how we think we're gonna, well, we're gonna go through a process of defining and maybe coming up with something, but to carry him through to then, what does he tell people?
just like what I said, at this time, we don't have a formal loan program.
and we have several options. One is not to consider
Mhm.
anything. Another is to generate a program off the documents that have been generated in the past. Work with the county to generate, let's say, a structure of a program, or basically do nothing and just allow anything to come with it.
Can I ask, and this is transparency and getting out in front of what the board wants you to be doing, at some point, do you want to ask the board if they support you offering a loan program as an EDA? And if the board says, we prefer our EDA didn't offer a loan program, is that acceptable to you as an EDA?
I think we know the answer to that already.
I think we do.
Well, I think that's a matter of consideration because we're two separate entities under the Code of Virginia. And I think that's a matter then of consideration on two levels. One is the fact that it is permitted at those two levels. If the board says to the EDA, we don't want you to do that, then I think because there's that division, it's something for the EDA to consider. At the same time, the board has the right for any of the board members to ask for resignations. And I think that's within the purview of their responsibility and change the composition of the excuse me.
I don't think any responsibility to that point. I mean, they appointed you guys because of faith in your experience and knowledge and all those things. I think it's really just making sure we're doing things in lockstep and support of one another. And there's some things that they certainly would support and some things they would be indifferent on and say, if that's what the EDA wants to do, great, let them go do it. And others that they'd just be like, look, we prefer that a board appointed by us, even with special authorities, didn't do that.
Well, it's like the motion we have coming up, with regards to shrinking of the board, EDA from 7 to 5 members. I completely concur with that. I completely concur with Senator Chase's amendment, or her bill before the General Assembly. I lobbied on behalf of that. So I think individual, let's say, actions by EDA members, then because EDA can vote, no, we don't want to go to 7, even though it's permitted, but that's not what the board wants. So, I mean, I'm going to vote for it, obviously. So I see where there's always the opportunity to, let's say, because of separate entities, and not trying to play anything other than, I'll say, the consideration of the members of this board, and not to play it off against the board supervisors either. That's not what I'm saying.
Can we say for now that as an EDA, we don't have a formal loan program until, and if, and possibly until such time as we have completed our strategic plan or something along those lines? Because whenever we've had anything come before us, I have felt like we've known as a board how to answer them because we don't know how it fits in with where we're going as a board. Because we haven't had a direction. We haven't had a strategy on what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, I mean, I go back to, let's say, earlier events where we, let's say, donated money to different efforts. And I think at that time, I'll go to Means Park. I think that was a very worthwhile donation. So, and that was a grant. So I think that was very reasonable, and I think we should have that capability to do it because it's going to help promote one of, I think, the county's goals of tourism and the whole recreational activity of the surrounding river. I just don't want to eliminate things like that being done between now and when we do have a focused strategic plan. And I don't think it runs, let's say, obtuse to anything the county wants to do. Because in one sense, we have the county representation that would say, you know, this is, we don't want to see, well, it's not fair to say things for improve things that need improvement. But to say there's a difference, the board has a difference than what the EDA does on this. And I think we have a perfect channel to do that on a real-time basis. So I don't see that as a conflict. But that's just, again, me as an individual member speaking.
Still is very cognizant on what the county employees are faced with having to say to people on our behalf.
And in one sense, you can also say that it's the opportunity any business to come to us directly.
I think you kind of mean, I think I'm deciding that on this. I think loans is a tool in the tool bag. It shouldn't be thrown out, waiting for us to learn how to use the tool. I mean, I think it should remain there. And I think every time we get if we should get a request for a loan, I think we ought to deal with the issues that you talked about, John. It should be, how are you going to secure the loan? How does it fit into the strategic plan? And then we'll all develop and that type of thing. But if we're talking about like a formal declaration suspending the loan program, I don't think I would agree with that. I think we ought to just keep it going. If the county administration folks need to be say, we're going to direct you to the EDA for further guidance on that. I know that might throw some pressure on Todd or somebody like that. I'd rather do that than make a declaration that we're going to suspend this tool that's essentially part of our makeup is.
It's a part of your makeup if you want it to be part of your makeup. It's not a requirement.
Right.
And so
I agree. But the next great idea came along, and something, they want to put I don't know, amusement park in the courthouse or something, and they're for want of $50,000, for something, it's probably the best thing we've ever seen. We're going to secure it because we're going to, I don't want to make a joke out of this, but we're going to have security in this whole thing. I just hate to jettison that right now.
We can't entertain it though. We don't have guidelines.
Well, but I'm saying we keep working on those guidelines. I'm just saying let's not.
Well, you can't handle it in the time frame until we get it. What do you say to them? We'll figure it out later.
No, I think they make a request to the EDA and we deal with it at that.
Then you're just, like John said earlier, whipsawing them back and forth month to month because we can't possibly seriously entertain it.
But how long is it going to take us, Kurt, to get this laid out?
As long as it takes.
Well, maybe how long has it taken us just to get a vote on Carlos and Britta? This has been going on 3 months.
Right.
Because we haven't had a quorum
It's
and
unfair to them.
things happen, and in the meantime, they may have completely lost out on an opportunity.
If we get somebody else from the door that we want to entertain because we say we can, I think it's unfair to them.
Well, if they come in and we're unprepared to deal with that situation, we don't. We're not prepared to deal with that situation at this time. Then they go on to some financial institution or they find some other way to go.
But that's what we were voting on, right? To suspend any entertainment of loans.
I'm a lifelong bureaucrat.
I get it.
Here's what I'm reacting to. I'm hearing that if we're suspending something, we're allowing more time for something to happen. We're not saying something proactive and saying, okay, we're going to have this thing in place by August 27th.
We don't know. We may not offer a loan program.
That's what scares me. Because then we just keep.
I personally feel we're in trouble with a loan program. I just do.
Where have we failed on the loan program with regards
I haven't said we have. I fear for the future because we can't get this one done. This simple $50,000.
Well, I would suggest it's not simple because of the fact that all the parameters are involved in it. If you look at, for example, one of the cases, or one of the issues that was brought up was the land.
Great.
Right?
Great.
Well, that's not an issue. It should never be an issue because it's recorded in the deed structure of the county, right? That's not an issue to me. That's a problem with whoever's been due diligent internal to the business. So therefore, that right there sends up a red flag.
Right.
Right. And that's I think I alluded to that.
There are several issues with that.
Yeah.
Right.
So therefore, if there's no certainty, that's a risk. And that's a risk, therefore, I'm saying, and hence the motion, that there's too much uncertainty.
Mhm.
And that's logical for us as an
Right.
EDA to say, no, we don't do this.
Yeah, we need to play this out a little bit. Because if they're an applicant, you go to a bank. What processes, what criteria, what do you need to submit? At the end of the day, the bank's board that reviews and approves a loan, someone has vetted their creditworthiness. Someone has already said, you know what, all the zoning, land use stuff's already addressed. Those boxes should be checked before you're making a decision. You shouldn't be sitting here and questioning whether or not the floor drains work, or did they really get good estimates on their sinks and stuff. We, as your staff, need to administer something to you and say, okay, you had a process, they've addressed every single piece of that process. We would recommend to you, based on the creditworthiness review, based on the security we have in place, that the EDA should approve this loan or disapprove it based on these reviews. We can't do any of that. And so I just,
We're capable of doing that as well.
Well, you know, I'll suggest to you that we're not incapable.
I'm not capable.
No, that we're not incapable. That is, we have the ability to make certain risks, and hence the reason why I made the motion, and hence the reason why, you know, based on my risk assessment, this is not a way to proceed with this particular loan. However, if there's a need for the variance, and that's the reason I accepted the friendly amendment, amendment. But coming back to contractual and history, I haven't seen a failure history-wise, and I think with our council in particular, we have the capability to do some process, due process, and then at the same time, you know, from individual risk management, I have some certainty, but, you know, when we looked at the Laking Hole submitted a tremendous backup, their plan and so forth. I mean, we sell a lot of proprietary information. Now, I think that request is up to us again, for whatever we request of information to do our individual risk assessment. But
I understand, I just agree with John, we just don't have bandwidth to work with that. We don't have the vetting process, we don't have staff to support it, there's no guidelines to support it. I know you've done it, I value your tenure here, I wasn't here to go through those discussions. I'm not saying we can't do something like that, but I'm just afraid of offering a loan program. I fear not being able to service it correctly.
no, we've been offering a loan program. It's a matter of whether or not we cancel it, because we've been doing it,
We haven't talked about canceling.
well, we
Tabling it
Well,
is not
suspending
the
it.
same as
suspending,
canceling it.
suspending, and you know, go back
Just
to
putting
this
it on the
point.
back burner for right now.
You know, what's the date we say that it's no longer, you know, we don't have it, and that's problematic into it, so. And I'm sorry.
you want to ask the board if they wanted to do a loan program? I mean, cause I was to a member who said they don't want. At the end of the day, while you're independent and you have certain authorities, you're spending your budget, and the money that's collected from the EDAs over the years is perceived as county funds, and your actions are perceived as county actions. Yes, you have certain state code authorities, but I think the board has concerns of certain things being done by the EDA, and the loan program was the only one we've ever talked about that they did not seem supportive of. I have not been able, I am, by the way, it may come off, I'm actually a supporter of the loan program. I know it's not coming off that way, but I'm a supporter of it with criteria and structure. In which we are lacking currently. I've been in EDAs that have had loan programs that were targeted and were very successful. So I'm not a disbeliever that they aren't valuable tools. I just am struggling to sit here and tell you as the staff that we could administer a loan if we got it tomorrow. I could not tell you whether or not, yes, Carlos and them went to the SBA and they wrote up a business plan, but as you looked at the business plan, I mean, did any of you dissect their business plan?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have to sell so many burritos on a Tuesday night to be able to pay the taco or the chip delivery guy plus this. I don't know if that's sustainable, if it's gonna pay back a $50,000 loan or not. I would dare say someone that's used to doing credit worthiness could do that. I think we've been lucky that the whole pay.
And, you know, carrying on that discussion, that the analysis of voting for the $50,000, I was not going to vote for the $50,000, but I will vote, or I would vote for the variance. And to me, that's two different cases. One is where the process is established for that, setting up that business at that location, I think was unfair to them. And again, that's an individual assessment value, right?
I'm not sure some of us would agree.
And at the same time, when I looked at the business plan, I could not buy it. And that is my inherent risk management involvement.
I was uncomfortable that we didn't have the collateral at all. And they didn't have the building. Those are the two things, major things that they.
You know, that kind of goes back to the one previous, I guess it's fair to say barbecue. And the same thing.
Same thing.
Somebody else's property, that, you know, it doesn't make sense to me. I can't. Whereas Lignol, it's their property, their tangible, and you can write within the construct of an agreement, here's the methodology, we're gonna use to go after you. You know,
I do think that we need to move on and finish up for the evening, but I think that we need to continue discussing this matter because we really haven't had a discussion like this. And we
I think it is helpful.
need to
I'm glad we're
carry
able
on.
to, we'll get somewhere together and I'm convinced of it.
This is why we have different people on boards with different opinions. We okay with that?
Yes, ma'am.
that's it.
All right, so we do need to move on and make an appointment, or discuss an appointment to fill our vacated treasurer position. We have two of you at the table here that could potentially fill, or, well, I don't think Lucy has any desire, and she's almost ready to come off the board anyway. I believe her term is up in January or February. So would either of you,
For the new person.
consider the role of treasurer?
I think maybe you could help DB, commit, he's a little worried with his work
You have no
issues.
interest in that
I'm
yourself?
vice chair.
Oh, that's true, but you can hold two hats.
I don't want to. He's a little concerned about how much effort and work is involved with it. He was asking before you arrived.
It's terrible.
It's, you might be able to help him out there.
It's sheer burden.
Yeah, I will see it, if, you know, again, given that it's coming from the city manager's office and the director of finance, assume we're using the gap and,
So
see if everything's in order.
we don't really need to vote because it's a vacated position, so we just have to formally appoint you.
I would just make a motion.
Okay,
And so moved.
we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
I,
Did you get turned over
you've
from
been
Mr. Hall?
successfully realized.
Did you get turned over from Mr. Hall yet? Because
No, I haven't seen him since,
We don't have it either.
You won't see him.
yeah. Well, you know, Rick was in the hospital for a while. He said he had a bout with AFib. And so he just, in fact, I said I'd see him. I had dinner with him Thursday night. He had just gotten out of the hospital the week before. So he's been,
Yeah, we knew it was
yeah, so he's, but he, you know, you talk to him, you never realize he's had it. You know, just keeps cruising. So.
Thank you, and then maybe you two can have a conversation.
Sure.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
All right, the next on the agenda is the consideration of amendment of bylaws of the Economic Development Authority, reducing the membership to 5 members consistent with state law.
Madam Chair, I move that we amend our bylaws of the EDA to reduce the membership to 5 members in accordance with the Code of Virginia change of which are
Second. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? All right, so then, Lisa, we have a couple of bills to be paid.
Yes, ma'am.
One of them is, Leclerc Ryan for services rendered from May 31st.
Madam Chair, I move that we agree to pay Leclerc Ryan for services rendered through May 31st,
In the amount of $130.50.
not modified.
Alright, and the other one is for Baycorp for the insurance renewal from July.
Madam Chairman, I have a
I have
question.
two bills.
We had Miss Henselman come and speak to us, and then she subsequently wrote a note back to us that asked us if we wanted to reduce our coverage on the crime portion of our insurance, that we could save $675 for a $250,000 limit versus a $750,000 limit. I didn't know if that was
Is
something.
that reflected in this? Do we know?
That is the bill because I don't think anybody responded with, they wanted the reduction.
I waited until tonight to ask that question.
Oh, okay.
She was pretty clear that we could manage that fairly, that would be a good move for us to make.
Right.
Maybe we separated into two separate motions. One, the first one being for the
$130.50.
That's correct.
and there's a
Second, who's the second?
I'll second.
two second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that one is so moved.
And Madam Chair, we agree to pay Virginia Corp insurance for the insurance renewal for July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019, in the order amount of $2,276. And make that a motion to do so. And if there's a second, we'll start off the discussion.
Well, the discussion was that we, could potentially reduce that amount by about $600 by reducing the crime amount.
600.
We'll cover for.
Yeah, and the crime amount was actually increased, back by a motion I made, 4 years ago, because of the amount, the total amount, if you look at our treasury,
That's right, you weren't here last
and then,
She stated that we were pretty high versus other EDAs at 750,000, and said that she would look into it, and then her note to, well, at least I copied us on.
I sent
About
you the
saying
email
that.
that had the difference. I didn't think it was very much though.
I did not saying it's breaking the bank money, I just wanted to make sure we knew we had the opportunity to reduce our bill to the big work if we thought it was feasible to do.
yeah, and I was looking at it strictly from, let's say, crime and embezzlement. We have approximately 682,000, so therefore the limit that she expressed, which was,
750?
oh, I thought it was a lower number.
I'm sorry, 250, right?
Yeah, that was my concern, is that we dipped down to that level, and therefore if there was some type of investment or something else, it wouldn't be covered, potentially, the way I read the contract, to address the higher amount that we have in the checking account. And that's the reason why I didn't respond.
Right.
And
Okay.
the difference you made.
What do you think?
I think since Ben made an original motion to increase it, he feels strongly about it, and it's probably worth our $675 to keep it where it is.
So there's a motion on the table to go ahead and pay this for $22.76.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so moved.
If we can just risk the EDA, as a body, I think we have to cover ourselves to protect.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah.
You got a new treasure too, so.
Is there any other business to come before the EDA?
Point of order, if I may, of our wonderful county administrator. The request, I would be interested in learning the answer to that question. Or did you already state it on 2x2s, 1x1s, that was the response you received?
On the loan program,
Yes.
heard from all of them that they did not believe we should use the loan limit. I will tell you, I shared with them what I shared with you earlier. I said, I don't necessarily agree about nothing in the loan business, but being more targeted. I had shared with them the sheet that I gave you guys at the meeting, I guess about 3 meetings ago, the night that we had the long discussion on it, with the criteria. And I said, look, I owed it to tell my bosses that they may hear from their appointees that we've had an interesting conversation with the EDA meeting. And it was started because we were prompting these questions and the criteria. And so the more we got into that, they started to question, why were they considering that loan program? And it just sort of went down that rabbit hole. And there are some that are just like Mr. Peterson verbalized at the retreat that are just, we shouldn't be in the loan business. We shouldn't compete with private entities that do loan. There's reasons why EDAs get loans that help because they couldn't get the benchmark. So I see his perspective and I understand that. And there's others that said, you know, if I could get supportive of it, you would have to have clear direction and support. And I think they did like some of those criteria that we laid out for consideration. And so I would say it was more of a collective no, not based on what we know now would we support a loan program. And I think that they saw some more value in them and you being in support of. If you did a loan program, the board would support it under these kinds of terms. So I think it was more of, yeah, I don't think and admittedly some were no loans, and others probably could get there if they understood the structure a little better. So I think that's where it was, but at the time there wasn't support for the loan program in that status.
I did have one question. Where do we stand on the last piece of property that we haven't looked at?
That's a good question. I know we have a last piece of property in there, but this is your.
At midpoint,
Midpoint.
right, and that's the one that has the BMP on it.
Right.
And I don't know what, we do have that property, it has a BMP, but
And Ms. Hudson was gonna send or talk to someone in her
the surrounding,
about the lake or the water to have.
right, and Matt was going to go out and meet with
Correct.
that guy
Correct.
to walk the property to
Correct.
see what we could do to protect ourselves for insurance
Wasn't there
purposes.
another entity that's already out there that was interested in purchasing that at some point?
Andrew Browning has all the other properties, so I don't know, that's a Matt thing for me.
That's a math question.
We will follow up.
Okay.
I have
Okay.
it in for mail.
And then Lisa, I do have these foreclosure statements.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Go with them maybe next time on this.
Thank you, Mayor.
I think another one comes out in September. If there's nothing else on the agenda, we'll adjourn for our next regularly scheduled authority meeting on August the 15th.
I'm on vacation.
Good for you.
I'll be in New York City, so Todd will be here.